All right, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges and opportunities in modern research, using AI ethically. It can feel like the Wild West out there, but today we're unpacking a framework designed to bring some much-needed order to the chaos. It's called the Stress Framework, and it's basically a roadmap for navigating this new territory with confidence. Let's dive in. So, you're ready to tap into the power of AI tools like ChatGPT for your research. Awesome. But there's that little voice in the back of your head, isn't there? That nagging feeling of uncertainty about where the ethical lines are drawn. It's a super common feeling, and it's exactly what we're here to tackle today. And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. So many brilliant researchers are diving in without a guide, and they're left wondering what data is okay to use, what's off limits. It creates a lot of anxiety when you're just trying to get your work done. And this really gets to the heart of the dilemma for researchers. On one hand, the potential of AI is just massive. But on the other, the ethical traps are just as big. So what are the specific worries that are, keeping people up at night? It turns out researchers everywhere are asking the exact same questions. It's everything from the nitty-gritty stuff, like what data can I share and how do I talk about this in my paper, to the really big picture concerns, like staying in control of your work and making sure you're still following the ethical codes we've had for years. These are the problems that any good framework has to solve. And that's precisely where this solution comes into play. The STRSSS framework. It's designed to take all that anxiety and replace it with a clear, confident plan, giving researchers that roadmap they've been missing. I really love that the creators call it a companion. That says it all, right? This isn't some rigid, scary set of rules you have to follow. It's more like a guide that works with you, helping you think through the ethics of your project every single step of the way. So the framework starts with S for sensitivity, and this is all about remembering the human element. For instance, if you're working with something like patient interviews, the potential for harm is huge. So this first pillar makes you stop and ask, am I really handling this data with care? Am I doing everything I can to protect the people behind it? That focus on care leads perfectly into the T for transparency. For academic integrity, this is a total non-negotiable. I mean, think about it. If other researchers can't figure out how you used an AI, they can't replicate your work. It's that simple. This is all about being upfront about what tools you used, for what purpose, and creating a crystal clear record of your process. And building on that clear record is R for responsibility. This one is all about accountability. If an AI tool spits out a totally flawed analysis, who's on the hook for it? The tool? Nope, the researcher. This pillar forces you to set up clear ownership and an audit trail, so every decision can be traced back to a real person. The E is for ethics, and this is really the core of the whole thing. This is where you connect your shiny new AI process to the bedrock principles we've always had: getting approval, making sure you have consent, and respecting community values. An AI might not get the subtleties of informed consent, but you do. It doesn't get a pass on the ethical standards we already have in place. The second S stands for skepticism, and oh man, is this one important. It's a huge reminder that AI is a tool, not a magical truth machine. It can hallucinate, basically just make stuff up, or completely miss crucial context. That means we have to actively push back on its answers, check them against other sources, and be honest about the tool's limits. The key is to verify, not just trust. And the final pillar here is the third S, security. This gets into the technical nuts and bolts of protecting your data from leaks, hacks, or just being misused. And, it's worth mentioning that as these frameworks keep evolving, you might also see another S for sustainability pop up here, which is all about making sure your process is responsible over the long haul. Okay, so we've got the principles down, but how do you actually apply all this stuff? Well, this is where the framework stops being theory and becomes a super practical, hands-on tool. It does this with something called a risk scoring rubric. It's a really smart way to grade your project's risk level for each of the stress pillars. It takes that vague, anxious feeling and turns it into a clear, measurable evaluation. Here's a quick look at how it works. It makes things so clear. Take the sensitivity pillar. If you're just using public anonymous data, that's low risk, you're in the green. But the second your data contains personally identifiable information, bam, you jump straight to critical risk, deep in the red. Same for ethics. Got explicit consent and approval, low risk. Using data that goes against what a community is okay with, that's a critical risk. It makes the abstract stuff feel really tangible. To see just how practical this whole thing gets, let's do a quick deep dive and zoom in on just one of these pillars. Let's take a look at security. Because, it's easy to say be secure, but what does that actually mean when you're working on a project? The framework breaks it down into simple, actionable checklists. So for security, it boils down to 4 key actions. First, data minimization. Basically, don't be a data hoarder. Only keep what you absolutely need. Second, access control. Use stuff like multi-factor authentication to lock things down. Third, encryption, which protects your data whether it's just sitting there or being sent somewhere. And finally, use secure environments, like an approved cloud platform, not just a random folder on your laptop. See? Simple, clear, and super effective. Okay, let's zoom back out and tie this all together. Why is a framework like STRS so incredibly important right at this moment? Well, this framework is for a whole lot of people. It's for seasoned researchers, sure, but it's also for program evaluators and especially for doctoral students who are just now building the habits that will last their entire careers. Really, it's for anyone who wants to use these powerful new tools with confidence and a clear conscience. And I want to leave you with this really powerful idea from the source material. It's a quote that just perfectly sums up the whole philosophy here. The point of all this isn't just to automate our work faster. The point is to use automation as a tool that supports our own thoughtful, careful human reflection. So the stress framework gives us the guardrails we need. It gives us the roadmap, the companion. But it also leaves us with one final big question to think about. A framework is an essential tool, but is it enough on its own? Or does true ethical AI always come back to the judgment and the integrity of the actual person behind the screen? Thanks for watching.